Okay, we are live on YouTube. We are live on YouTube, and we can begin, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Candace, what was that?
I said we are live on YouTube, and we can begin the meeting.
Thank you so very much. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, October 4th monthly meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. My name is Kiba Samuel and I serve as chair of the Planning Commission. We will go through some virtual meeting protocols. Today's meeting is being streamed online in accordance with the state's electronic meetings statute. The requirements of notice, access, and minutes are being met through electronic means. The public and the media can watch this meeting on the City of Charlotte's YouTube channel and later as a post recording on the Charlotte Planning, Design, and Development's Facebook page. We will begin with introductions now, and I will begin with our commissioners. Chirinos.
Astrid Chirinos, Planning Commission, Zoning Committee, present.
Commissioner Barbie.
Karen Barbie, Planning Commission.
Commissioner Ham.
John Ham, Planning Commission.
Commissioner Gaston.
Melissa Gaston, Planning Commission.
Commissioner Harvey.
RJ Harvey, Planning Commission.
Commissioner Kelly.
Peter Kelly, Planning Commission.
Commissioner McMillan.
Elizabeth McMillan, Planning Commission.
Russell.
Will Russell, Planning Commission.
Rhodes.
Courtney Rhodes, Planning Commission.
Spencer.
Sam Spencer, Planning Commission.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Philip Gussman, Vice Chair, Planning Commission.
Welton.
Stobbles Welton, Planning Commission, Zoning Committee.
Blumenthal.
Andrew Blumenthal, Planning Committee. Or Planning Commission, excuse me.
I think I have all of our commissioners here. I'll go through our staff. Candace.
Candace Rory, Planning Staff.
Alan.
Alan Goodwin, Planning, UDO.
Alicia.
Alicia Osborne, Planning, Comp Plan.
Allison.
Allison Craig, Deputy Planning Director.
Catherine.
Catherine Mahoney, 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
Evan.
Evan Lowry, Planning Staff.
John Howard.
Afternoon, John Howard, Charlotte Area Transit System.
Laura.
Laura Harmon, Planning Staff, UDO.
Dr. Robin.
Dr. Robin Byers, Planning Staff, Comp Plan.
Siobhan. Siobhan. Okay.
It looks like she's not connected to audience.
Okay. And did I miss anyone? Anybody? Okay. And hearing none, we'll move right to the approval of the meeting minutes from our July 12th work session. Seems like eons ago.
Gussman motions to approve July 12th work session minutes.
Motion by Gussman. Do we have a second?
Blumenthal, second.
Motion by Gussman, Blumenthal, second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Chirinos.
Yes.
Commissioner Barbie,
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey,
Yes.
Welton,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Gaston,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Spencer,
Yes.
Blumenthal,
Yes.
Gusman.
Yes.
The chair votes yes, it passes unanimous. Thank you. Due to earlier technical difficulty, we're already 25 minutes into our meeting. Is anyone of the commissioners opposed to reserving discussion of the 2022 Planning Commission Work Program to our November 8th meeting? Typically, we would discuss here in the October meeting and vote and finalize in the November meeting. Is anyone opposed to combining those two items in the November 8th meeting? And I think, Candace, I need a vote to amend the agenda. Does anyone want to make the motion?
Commissioner Barbie, I'll make that motion to amend the discussion to our next meeting.
This is Commissioner Welton. I will second that motion.
Motion by Barbie, second by Welton. Commissioner Blumenthal,
Yes.
Chirinos,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Gaston,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Spencer,
Yes.
Gusman,
Yes.
Barbie,
Yes.
and Welton.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that passes unanimous. Thank you all for your flexibility. So we'll jump to our presentation on the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan Update. And I believe, Catherine, that's going to be you.
Yes, thank you. Candace, you're going to share the presentation, correct? Thank you. While she's jumping to the beginning of the presentation, I'll let you all know the intent for today is to, you can go to the next slide. Thanks, Candace. Provide a brief overview of the phase 1 engagement that just closed last Friday, and then provide a brief preview about what's coming next. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, the Charlotte Future 2040 policy map is a companion to the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And it's essentially the first step to implementing the comprehensive plan. Through this effort, we're going to translate the plan's place-based policies to specific geographies throughout the community. And the value of this effort is that the map will ultimately inform a number of city processes, such as future zoning districts and mobility and capital investments. Next slide, please. I just want to provide a few examples of what we mean when we say place-based policies. There's a lot of recommendations in the 2040 plan. And this mapping effort will really focus on the policies that tell us where and how future development should occur. So in the first example on the screen, the plan recommends that we increase the number of middle density units, such as quadruplexes or apartments, along our major transit lines and our major thoroughfares. And so the idea there is to pair future growth with the transportation infrastructure that could actually accommodate it. So in order to realize this plan goal, we could map a number of place types, for example, neighborhood 2, community activity center, or regional activity center. So we will be looking for the opportunities in this mapping effort to assign those place types in areas that meet that goal. Another example is The comprehensive plan calls for increasing the number of jobs in areas with low access to jobs. Again, we can meet the goal of the plan by assigning a number of place types. Campus, innovation, mixed use, or our larger activity centers all provide better access to jobs. So through this mapping effort, we're going to look for areas with low access to jobs and then assign a place type accordingly. Next slide, please. You all have seen this slide. It's an overview of how we plan to engage the community throughout this project. We just closed the first phase of engagement last Friday, and the objective of the phase one was to really promote the project, raise awareness about it, and ask the community which place types they found most and least desirable around where they live, work, and play. I'll provide some more in-depth information about what we heard from the community in phase one next, and then we'll come back to phase 2 and 3 later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So this is an example of what we've been asking the community from July through last Friday. We were asking them which place types were least or most desirable around where they live, work, and play. And in the example of providing more jobs in low access areas, this is how it might play out, or this is how their input will be used moving forward. So for example, which place type would you prefer, or do you think is most desirable around where you live, work, or play? In the goal of the, in this example of providing more jobs, perhaps somebody would prefer to live or work or play around a community activity center. So because a number of place types can be applied to meet the goal of that plan, it's helpful to know what the community prefers. And so in instances where there's a choice, or we could assign one or more, or two or more place types to meet the plan goal, it's helpful to know what the community prefers, and we'll take that preference into consideration for the 2040 draft plan or draft map. Next slide, please. This is an overview of our phase one engagement reach. So we kicked it off in July, late July, and just concluded last week. Throughout 2.5 months, we've participated in 98 different engagements. This includes presentations to internal stakeholders such as our elected and appointed officials. It includes collaboration with other planning initiatives such as the Strategic Mobility Plan and the Silver Line community meetings. It also reflects a number of pop-up events that we attended and a number of neighborhood meetings that we were invited to. Throughout the 2.5 months, we've heard from over 4,000 participants in our online survey. Well, yes, in our online survey. I'll talk about the hard copy later. And we've interacted with nearly 2,000 people. Next slide, please. Social media was a main tool in helping us get the word out throughout phase one. You can see that we were posting on average about 2 times a week, and we had some really good interaction with the content. Next slide, please. We used Facebook to help promote the survey in areas where we were seeing low participation. Excuse me. So over the course of phase one, we paid Facebook to promote our survey ad in those low participation zip codes. And we did 3 of those. Each campaign ran for about a week. And so over the course of those 3 weeks, that effort was able to generate or lead over 500 people to our online survey. We can't guarantee that those who interacted with the survey completed it, but it at least helped drive over 500 people from those low participation areas to our survey. Next slide, please. We also sent out several email blasts throughout phase one, all geared at trying to encourage participation in the survey. These blasts went to different groups like our neighborhood leaders, our community partners, our strategic ambassadors, and over 2,000 people who are subscribed on the Charlotte Future 2040 Plan distribution list. What's interesting here is you can see there were over 6,000 people that received it, but over 8,000 that opened it. So this tells us that a number of people who received it forwarded it on to others, and we appreciate the help in promoting the effort. Of the 8,000 plus that opened it, nearly half of them interacted with the content by clicking on the survey link. Next slide, please. This is a map. It's available on our project website. It summarizes our phase 1 engagement activity. There's 2 layers of information displayed here. The first, you can see the geographic distribution of where we were throughout the last 2.5 months. A number of our engagement events were virtual, so our reach might have been further than what's illustrated here, but it gives you a good idea of how far we were able to stretch our presence within this time period. The second layer of information is also the level of participation within our phase 1 survey. So not everyone who participated in the survey shared their zip code. So here on the map, you'll see about 3,000 people of the 4,200 are reflected in these zip codes. We have to collect the hard copies from the libraries and the YMCAs this week. So this map is likely going to change, and hopefully there will be better representation in some of the low participation areas. But at this time, there are still several zip codes that have insufficient participation, and that's areas with 0 to 19 responses. So staff is discussing how we can better engage these areas in the next phase of the project. Next slide, please. In terms of who participated in our survey, we tracked 3 demographic questions: age, race, and ethnicity. This slide illustrates the distribution of age based on those who responded to this question. So not everyone answered, but of those who did, you can see that we have a pretty good distribution amongst those who are 25 to 65 and older. Unfortunately, we're still seeing low participation from our younger residents. So we will continue to try and reach that demographic. We have a call later this week with a youth engagement organization to see how we can improve that moving forward. In terms of race, next slide, please. The majority of participants were white or Caucasian. So again, we need to continue strategizing about how to improve this distribution throughout phase 2. Next slide, please. And same with ethnicity. There was a very small percentage of participants who were of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. And this is a key demographic for us. So we'll continue to strategize how to improve that moving forward. Next slide. In terms of what we heard from those who participated, one of the main questions was which place type are most desirable near where you live, work, and play. Hands down, parks and preserves are the most desirable place, regardless of where you live, work, and play. So that's not too surprising. Neighborhood 1 was considered a desirable place to live near, but not as desirable of a place to work or play near. So this place type has an important value to our community, but is recognized to not necessarily meet all of our needs. Another major takeaway is that a number of people would prefer to live near a less intense activity center, so neighborhood center or community activity center, rather than a regional activity center. And this is something that we can take into consideration as we make recommendations for centers throughout the community. Perhaps we assign more neighborhood and community activity centers than regional activity centers. It's also interesting that a number of people thought innovation mixed use is a desirable place to both work and play near. This place type seems to offer some intriguing opportunities to the residents. So that was an interesting finding. And then finally, more people are interested in working near a regional activity center, but they still seem to prefer a less intense center when it comes to play. So living and playing around a smaller center seems to be of preference. And then, as I mentioned, we can assign a number of place types to meet each of the plan goals. And so the input collected here will be considered as we make place type assignments in the 2040 draft. Next slide, please. In terms of which place types are least desirable around where we live, work, or play, manufacturing and logistics, understandably, is considered the least desirable, both or around all three activities, live, work, and play. And then commercial was seen as the second or the next to least desirable place around these three activities. Next slide, please. So that is that our phase 1 engagement window has closed, and we are now preparing and looking ahead to phase 2. In phase 2, we're going to release the draft of the 2040 policy map. And the objective of this phase is to explain to the community how it was developed, have conversations about how it compares to our previous policy direction, and collect input on any areas of concern. When we ask the community about areas of concern on this map, we're trying to identify thematic issues that can be addressed in our overall approach. So for example, if we consistently hear that a mixed use area has been incorrectly translated, we can review our input steps and see if maybe there was incorrect translation or crosswalk. An easy example to think about is maybe a particular zoning district was incorrectly translated to a corresponding place type. And so that's an approach, or that's a change or revision that we can make to the approach, which would be reflected citywide. What we won't be asking for are, place by place or block by block changes based on the community's evolving vision or desire for their community. And the input that we collect in phase 2 will then be used to update the mapping approach, and we hope to deliver a revised map by the end of the year. Next slide, please. For phase 2, the way that we're going to structure this window of engagement is using a 2-part meeting series. The first meeting will be a citywide informational meeting scheduled for October 13th. We'll air the meeting both at lunch and in the evening, and then it will be recorded and available online thereafter. The objective of this meeting is to share information about how the map was developed and talk about the level of input that we're looking for. Following that citywide or that virtual informational meeting, we'll hold a series of community conversations. There are 15 geographies. We will be meeting with each geography twice, so it's essentially 30 virtual meetings. They will be scheduled between October 14th and November 9th. And again, in addition to holding the meetings in the afternoon and evening, these sessions will be recorded and available online. And we also have several makeup sessions scheduled on Saturdays if people aren't able to attend a conversation of their interest. The objective in these meetings, again, is to look at the map at a smaller geography and identify those thematic issues that need to be addressed citywide. Next slide, please. This is a map of the 15 geographies that we'll be holding the community conversations in. And the map, these geographies are basically based on guidance from the 2040 plan. Again, the plan recommends moving forward that we do community planning rather than neighborhood planning, which is what we have previously done. And the reason for that is that, planning issues such as connectivity or development pressure don't stop at a neighborhood boundary. It's really more of a community scope issue. And then broadening our planning areas will help us to move through the community more effectively and periodically so that we're touching all parts of the community on a regular basis. So these boundaries are just a starting point. They're roughly based on existing and projected populations, and they can be revised in the future as needed. And then I don't have a slide for this, but I just want to close by reminding everyone that the 2040 policy map effort is just the first step in implementing the plan. It is not our final planning step. Once the map is adopted, we'll be moving through these 15 planning areas and undergoing planning efforts to develop plans that address things like specific transportation needs or capital investment needs or programmatic needs that are needed to realize the vision of the plan and the map. So that's all the information I have to share today. And Candace, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Catherine. I think that this next round of engagement, that's some pretty tight windows. I hope you guys have your clones ready. The Saturday meetings, I have one question. The Saturday meetings didn't have a time. Do you guys had any thoughts around that or proposed time?
I believe they're from 9 to 10 or 10 to 11. It's advertised on our project website now. I need to, if you visit our project website, you can see the times for the Saturday sessions.
Okay. And if you have any questions for Catherine, can we use the raise hand feature? No questions for Catherine?
Astrid and RJ, it looks like, have questions.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, got it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair. Catherine, you know, looking at the youth or the very low engagement from our youth up to 24 years old and our Spanish-speaking community or immigrant community, I wonder how can we be more intentional about engaging the universities, you know, our, if we could, have we been able to go into, let's say, environments where we have young individuals, because, you know, the 2040 plan is by the time, that time is when they're going to be in their 40s and 50s, when they're going to be the most productive, right? So their input is so important. And then we have the Hispanic community that it is 16% of our city and is 18.2% of the United States and is the largest minority in the United States. And I'm just wondering how we could be more intentional about talking or just plan in some way so as we move forward, we'll get more input from them, because there are two bookends that are very important for our conversation as we talk about growth. So how have we engaged that, you know, 15 to 24, and then of course the Latino Hispanic community in terms of organizations?
We've reached out to the universities in phase one and asked for an audience with them. We have presented to 2 different university classes, but what we heard from them in phase one is that a lot of students aren't on campus yet. And so phase 2 is probably going to be a better chance to intercept them in person. So it doesn't excuse the low participation rate in phase 1, but we do think we'll have a better opportunity of engaging our younger residents in phase 2. In terms of the Latino community, we also had some audiences with different Hispanic and Latino groups, but we need to figure out ways to hear from more people in phase 2. So we're thinking about some of these community conversations, having Spanish breakout rooms so that they can participate in their first language, and then trying to coordinate with our partners better to promote these opportunities. So we've tried in phase 1, but we have to continue in phase 2 to try different tactics, because what we did in phase 1 wasn't sufficient.
Let me know how I can support you on that on both ends. maybe
Thank you.
offline conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chirinos. I think Commissioner Harvey.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to go back to sort of the age group conversation. If we, I mean, out of a population of 874,000 people, we got 3,500 input things, and even in the last question that was asked, we were redirected to a website. If those folks are tech savvy, let's say what Astrid was talking about, and they didn't participate, I mean, is there any other way of engagement? And I know this may sound like a broken record, but there are a number of, let's say, folks in my district, they're older, they're not going to. But I also have the flip side of that, because there's all the engagement, well, all of the population growth and on, say, like the South End neighborhoods and all of that. And if they're not engaged or engaging, I mean, truly, it's like, what's our thought about how do we get them? And I don't know if it's in the budget, if it's a Pollyanna approach, but where we can take, say, primetime spots, to kind of talk about these kinds of things, because I'm just afraid we're gonna miss them. That's the first one. And then the last one on the virtual mapping conversations with those 15 planned engagements, do we already have what those look like and where they are, or are we in need of folks to sign up? Thank you.
So in terms of the missed demographics and their tech literacy, we did see a pretty good participation of 65 and older in terms of our age distribution. However, we have hard copies available at libraries and YMCAs for those who are not tech savvy and prefer working with hard copies. I believe in phase 2, we need to do a better job of promoting that hard copy opportunity in order to generate more participation from that side. And then we just advertised the 15 community conversations starting Friday. So we don't have a pulse on how many people have registered yet. I will say what we've started with is the lower participation areas, kind of that outer ring. We have scheduled those meetings first so that we have time to reach them in a different way if they don't show up to the community conversation. If you look at the participation map, a lot of the activity is kind of within Route 4 or closer into Uptown. And so we're going to start in the further out ring to make sure that we have enough time in phase 2 to get them if they don't join us on the scheduled community conversation.
Catherine, you might want to mention that there was a postcard that went to every resident in the county, that if you're online or not, you receive that postcard in the mail that connects you to the project in some way. So whether you're young, old, it went to that household and it connected or led people to via scan, a QR code website, it led them to something to connect to the code, to the project. So that was one way. Another way too, that we were able to reach out.
Yeah, that survey was sent to almost 4,000 or 400,000 residents. And it was definitely the primary way that people said they heard about the survey, over 58 or near 58%. So for phase 2, it's obvious that mailers work. We're going to be sending a mailer to every neighborhood organization contact and letting them know what their specific, like what's the date of their community conversation. So we can't do as big of a mailing initiative this time, but we're going to at least spend some dollars to reach out to those registered leaders and ask for them to help us drive people to the scheduled community conversations.
Thank you, Catherine and Alicia, for that reminder on the postcard. I think that Commissioner Walton has a question for Catherine, and then I'll have a comment.
This is just a comment, and I think I made this comment to you before, Catherine. And we talk about engagement, and my comment is that the survey, in my opinion, professionally, was poorly designed. When you go to the survey, you go to the first page, the navigation for the survey was not visible to someone who comes to the first page of the survey. That is a prescription for people not to complete the survey. We could send this QR code to every person in the city. We could hold their phones over the QR code and get them to the survey. But if the survey is poorly designed, we will not get people to the end of it. I'd love to see the analytics of this situation. How many people got to the page versus how many people completed the page, the survey. And I think it would be low because the human-computer interaction is not what is necessary to get us the answers to the questions that we're asking. Those are my comments. And I stand by it. It is a theme that runs long and deep through surveys that are done by the city. And it's not useful. So enough said.
I totally understand. And I don't disagree with you. We're just working within constraints of the tools that we have available to us. We aren't designers. And so we have to use products that are off the shelf. And
I hear that. Get new tools. And I will gladly provide feedback and input on that. It's this way. Amazon doesn't measure the number of people that come to their website. They measure the number of people that actually order something and that they can make money from. If we're going to get stuck on vanity metrics of how many people actually come to our survey versus a useful statistic on how many people complete it, engagement is not how many people come, it's how many people stay. So
again, I understand and I hear you. We do have the 4,200 that participated are those who have completed it. So I hear you. I'm not sure how many got there and gave up because of poor design, but at least 4,200 completed it.
Yeah, that's going to be 1% out of the people that got the card. All right.
Douglas, I'm sorry. Yeah. Douglas, to that point, what would be helpful moving forward, because what we do know, we won't stop engaging people around projects and we definitely won't stop surveys. We would welcome your suggestions and also suggested products and pricing, because that would be a budgetary ask. And so we would need some assistance, your expertise in what those new tools might be and what they might cost, and we can explore those in the future.
Okay, well, I'll get back with you guys and we'll have a little party and talk about that, because oftentimes, again, people get stuck on vanity statistics. The number of opens is a vanity statistic. It's a vanity metric because different clients will sometimes report multiple opens. And so you don't know what unique opens are happening and the actions that are taken to that. And if you can't link the beginning action to the ending result, we're about, it should be about outcomes. So again, we can have that discussion offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Walton. If everyone has had their inquiries addressed, if you could use put the raise hand down. My final comment will be on basically, I think as commissioners on this commission, I think we have a responsibility to continue to be ambassadors for each piece of the 2040 plan. So I will be looking forward to you guys' sharing of information throughout your network. And if you're seeing error or improve that staff, I'm hearing an echo. Is that my audio or is everybody muted? I'm sorry about that if that's my audio, but I look forward to everyone continuing to share and engage with your own networks. And if you find fault or error or an opportunity for improvement for staff, let them know right away. This is a very tight window. So I believe that if we provide helpful suggestions or a little bit of direction and on what they can do to improve this process for resident engagement, I think if we share that information with them expeditiously, it will be very helpful. We all share concern, I believe. This can't be disputed. I think we all share concern that we want to hear from as many voices as possible throughout the different pieces of the 2040 plan. So again, I think that it would behoove all of us to remain engaged ourselves, to make sure that we're paying attention to the meetings, to attend the meetings, to continue to share information, and again, just be partners to staff as they push this information out. Thank you so much, Catherine, and I think we're ready for Dr. Robin.
So before I turn it over to Robin, I wanted to go through, kind of set the conversation up. Candace, will you put up our presentation or give Robin presentation rights? That works. You can skip to the second slide. Thank you, ma'am. So today we wanted to do a little bit of level setting. We have quite a few new commissioners, and it's only been a while since we adopted the comp plan. Haha, that's a joke. But wanted to just kind of level set where we are and where we're going, trying to just pull back up and connect all the pieces. Because I think there's a lot of moving parts, and if you're new to the conversation or even in it, it can be a little bit confusing. And so we'll start by talking about where we are and how the pieces fit together. And then talk about the two pieces of the plan that we are operating from with our major initiatives, and that's the implementation strategy and the manual and metric sections of the comprehensive plan. And then talk about how we will monitor, track, and report on the success or progress of the comprehensive plan. And then talk about some of the metrics and the implementation dashboard, the metrics and objectives and goals, and how we will measure all of that in the future. But before I begin, I wanted to, I'm Alicia Osborne. I wanted to introduce Dr. Robin Byers for those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting her. She comes to planning from Charlotte Department of Transportation, and she has a really diverse background. Mainly her love, I think, in her sleep is research and analytics. So she's really interested and really excited about leading our implementation program area. So we are working to we have a group of people within our division, long range and strategic planning, that are dedicated to implementation of the comp plan. We all play a part of that, but there are some pieces of it that need very kind of laser focus on making sure those parts keep moving in the background as we focus on some of these major initiatives, like the policy map, like the Unified Development Ordinance, and those types of projects. So next slide. At that one. So I mentioned the comp plan was adopted in June of this year, and thank you all again for your leadership and leading that effort and making sure that we reached adoption. And the plan has three major sections: the plan policy, which includes the community vision, the equitable growth framework, complete communities, and the policy framework. The second section, which Robin will talk to, the next two sections Robin will talk more about a little bit later, the implementation strategy and the manual and metrics. There are two big components or major initiatives that are associated with that. And we just talked about the policy map, and then we'll talk about in a later meeting, the fiscal impact analysis. We'll take a deeper dive into that. But there are portions of the plan that we're working on now, and then some other pieces that we'll continue to focus on. Next slide. So we talked a lot about engagement, and what I want to just kind of take a step back again, the journey it took for us to get where we are today. The plan was released back in October. At the time, it had 3 volumes, and it evolved over time with comments and feedback from the community and from council that it should have 3 sections. And that's the plan policies, implementation strategy, the manuals, and the metrics. Those sections of the plan, their comments, and the feedback and how we address those, all of that is still available online on our website, CLT Future 2040 Plan. If you want to just take a kind of a jaunt down memory lane to see how we engaged around those three parts, how those comments were addressed within the current plan, and then how we're moving forward. And so the plan was adopted, and what was adopted by council in June was the plan policies. What's projected on a tentative schedule for adoption in February or March is the implementation strategy and the manuals and metrics. Next slide, and I'll explain how that is envisioned to happen. So I'll do read a little bit because this slide is pretty important, and I want to make sure that we get it all and are on the same page. Is that one, the implementation strategy as well the manuals and metrics will be adopted with recommended revisions. So there are a number of initiatives that are currently underway that might inform how or provide some revisions to the implementation strategies and the manuals and metrics. For example, the 2040 policy map is one of those key examples. There are metrics, and the place type manual is in the manuals and metrics section of the plan. Through that work, if we receive information that something should be revised, then those are the recommendations or revisions we will bring forward to the group for adoption in February, March. February misspelled on the previous slide. Okay, you get that? And then, so the recommended revisions will be formed by staff work, engagement from those major initiatives like the policy map. Robin will go into a little bit of detail about the specific committees. There were some committees established by council within the comprehensive plan, like the Anti-Displacement Commission, which is known as NIST, the Community Benefits Task Force. It was also commissioned by council, those types of things. If there are recommendations that need to be revised or recommended within the implementation strategy, those will come before this group for recommendation to council for adoption. Next slide, and I'm gonna turn it over to Robin after this one. And so these are the three major initiatives that you guys have probably heard a lot about: the policy map, the Unified Development Ordinance, which is our implementation toolbox for regulations on how we develop, and then the Strategic Mobility Plan, which is more about mobility, how we move. So those three pieces are some of the major initiatives that connect the work together. And I'll turn it over to Robin, next slide, please, to talk about the implementation strategy in the manuals and metrics section. Robin?
And before Dr. Byers, before you start, and I'll say this for each presentation that we have remaining in this meeting, we have about 50 minutes remaining for about an hour and 15, 20 minutes worth of info. So anything that you can condense or abbreviate would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Alicia. I can talk very fast if need be. So if I need to slow down or you guys have questions, just let me know. I wanted to start with just going over what's in the implementation strategy. So if you guys have seen what is available on our website, these represent the different pieces of that. And so we have short-term actions. There's a list in the implementation strategy of short-term actions that my team is actively looking at, and we're trying to figure out the best timeline and the best way to attack those. We have the community area mapping piece, which is going to be coming. The community planning folks are still going to keep that piece as well. The Unified Development Ordinance obviously is something pretty big that another team is working on. Some of the other things, though, the anti-displacement tools. So there is a committee. Alicia is going to be representing us on that committee as well. But we're going to support the implementation and deployment of anything that can help reduce displacement. We're going to have we're going to be looking into some fiscal considerations. So obviously we have all these great ideas, but how do we actually get them implemented and how do we pay for it? And so we're looking at some of those as well. CIP preparation. A lot of what we hear is it's great if the development community does X, Y, and Z, but what about the city? And so we're going to look at how we tackle CIP projects and if there's a way that we can connect them to the goals of the 2040 plan as we move forward. Organizational capacity, that is going to be a lot of these agencies like university city partners, center city partners. Do we need more of those throughout the city? How can we help support those to help move our initiatives forward? And then obviously tracking progress, which I know you guys are very keen on understanding how we're doing that. And so I'll get into the specifics of those in just a minute. Before we get into anything else, I just wanted to talk about the 4 committees that we have. And so we have the Neighborhood Equity and Stabilization Commission, otherwise known as NEST. This is the anti-displacement committee that council put into place. It's a 3-year, 15-member commission that's going to review and recommend specific anti-displacement strategies and specific tools to protect residents. So we do have that. The lead agency is Housing and Neighborhood Services, but we are part of that, the staff group supporting that. We also have the Equitable Development Commission. During the comp plan adoption, I believe it was referred to as an infrastructure committee, but this is the formal name for it. It is a 3-year, 9-member commission to advise and assess infrastructure throughout the city and see if there are strategies that we can employ to make sure they're equitably shared across the city and not just in certain areas. We also have an implementation committee. This was recommended in the strategy, and we are going to do that because I'm going to need it. What we're going to do is twofold. What's in the implementation strategy talks about a committee that has public facing and has community representation on it, as well as staff. We're actually going to split those into 2 committees. And so planning committee is going to function as our public facing committee for the implementation group. So I look forward to working with a lot of you a lot more closely. And then we are going to create a subcommittee of the Joint Use Task Force, as that was an existing committee that already has a wealth of people from different agencies. And interagency coordination is really going to be important for implementation. Lastly, we have the Community Benefits Task Force. This is something that we actually just had our first workshop last week about. Community benefits and creating a community group is recommended in the plan. And so that group is going to advise on equitable community benefits throughout the city. We had a ULI technical assistant panel that was held at the beginning of June. And so we have findings from that. And then we had this workshop last week to really define what benefits are and have people start prioritizing what they do want to have and maybe can wait until a little bit longer of a time. So we had this split them up into short-term and long-term. And so we'll have some more outcome of that in the near future. So what's in manuals and metrics? I know this is a hot button topic and we were given 25 minutes. However, now I feel like we have 15 maybe at most. So part of what you guys got sent last week was a table of the different data inputs that we had for our different initiatives here. And so what the manuals and metrics document has is it goes over the equitable growth framework, the place types, and then the goals and objectives metrics. So what I'm really focused on in the implementation work program is the goals and the objectives metrics. But just wanted to go over here. We have different objectives for each piece, as you guys know. The metrics, you guys have that document that was sent out, and we will go into a deeper dive with that with planning committee. Specifically, I will just ask you guys now, if you have specific questions on the metrics, what I would love is if you guys could email those questions. That way I can make sure that we can respond to each of them. And I have the data and information to be able to respond. I know there were some questions about when are things getting updated. All the data has different update times and cycles for that data itself, depending on where it comes from. But specifically for the 3 pieces, our equitable growth framework is going to be updated every 5 years about. Place types will be updated with the community area planning process. So you guys will definitely have input and see those. And then the goals and objectives metrics are going to be updated annually. And there is an asterisk there because what I want to point out is we have an annual report, which I'll go on about in a minute. We are going to submit that annually, but if the metric itself is being updated every 2 years, we will show the same number 2 consecutive years and just make sure that there's a footnote that says it's the same and will be updated at the the following iteration. Because we don't own all of the data that we use, we have to work with what we have. Some example sources, a lot of our data comes from the American Community Survey, which is a subset of census. We call it the ACS. Some data is city data, some is county data, etc. What thing I will point out for place types is that place types uses Equitable Growth Framework and plan policies, and it goes through a methodology. So it's not as simple to say this metric is going in and it's coming out. It does go through some processing there. For the goals and objective metrics, we are going to try and keep it kind of in and out to the best of our ability. All right, so how are we going to track and monitor this stuff? We have two key initiatives that I'm going to be working with you guys. The first one is going to be the implementation dashboard. And so I know that Catherine has spoken to you guys about this in the past. So just give you an update, we did go over some case studies, Indianapolis, Marion County, Boston, Denver. The objective is to track the progress of the policy objectives for each of the 10 goals. And so we will have it split up by goal, and each goal will have different metrics associated with it. The audience is really everybody. Everyone's going to use this and be able to look to this as a tool to see where we are in progress. And so we have what we're calling it Dashboard 1.0. We'll establish the benchmarks. We know that there were some questions about the baseline data, and we will come back to you guys with that. This is all based on available metrics. And so I think that's key, and just to carry that theme through. We have about 30 some odd metrics that we have access to right now. And then part of what my team will be doing over the next 6 months to a year is figuring out, are we going to have access to this data? How do we find data and make something work for this metric that we need, and move forward that way? And so we'll have some updates for you probably toward the end of when you guys get the annual report on where we are with that. The other key thing I want to let you guys know that in November during your planning commission meeting, we will actually show you guys this dashboard. So when I came on board at the end of August, we had gotten some internal comments, and we've been working on tweaking some things. So that should be ready for you guys in November, and we'll bring that back. All right. The annual report, I'll go over this just very quickly. Just know that we're going to have an annual report at the end of every fiscal year where we'll go over what we've done over the last year, what metrics we have, if there's any trend changes and things like that. We will be sure to highlight those. Specifically, this is just another tool to show how we're progressing through things. It is an interdepartmental process, so this is why it is very key that we have this kind of implementation subcommittee of the Joint Use Task Force to help us work through these things. We're also going to have a summary of what we're looking for in the next year. As you guys know, best made plans sometimes happen and sometimes don't. So we're going to put a plan out for the next year, and then we'll see what happens in the next report, if that actually happened the way it was supposed to, or if we got guided to go in a different direction. So our next steps. In October, we're going to do a deeper dive of the metrics specifically. I know we've gotten a lot of questions from at least 3 people I have questions from. So I know that this is important to you guys. Again, please email me anything specific so I can make sure I have an answer for you. But that will happen at the planning committee in October. In November, we're going to go over the dashboard as we have it and get some feedback on that before it goes live. And that will be for the whole planning commission, I believe. And then in December, we will begin the review of recommended revisions to the implementation strategy and manual and metrics. So again, we do have a draft online on the planning website, but given all the work that we've started, we may want to tweak some things, whether it's tweaking language, add some things, what have you. And so we're working on that as we speak, and we should have that ready for you guys to review in December. And that is all I have for you. I hope I spoke as fast as possible and yet so clearly.
Absolutely. We thank you greatly for your flexibility there. I would encourage, so that we can keep this agenda moving forward. If you have an urgent question for Dr. Byers, you may ask it with the raise hand feature, but I will use this opportunity to press upon you that if you have questions regarding metrics, and I know many of us do, give Dr. Byers an opportunity to have those questions, have ample opportunity to prepare answers and to deliver those answers prior to or during the planning committee meeting, which is October 19. Yes, October 19. I would encourage if we can have those to her within the next week, that gives hopefully Dr. Byers an ample opportunity to address those questions and have responses ready for the planning committee meeting on October 19th. Any pressing questions for Dr. Byers? Anything urgent that can't wait? Commissioner Kelly.
Dr. Byers, thank you for the presentation. High level question. So it may not be it's not a detailed one, but trying to understand your intent of trying to bring in the new census data into the information. And I know the delays of ACS and everything else. The reason I keep bringing this up, and if you haven't heard, I do tend to bring it back up, is that the data in the census that was put out for 2020 for the voting districts includes demographics on race by each census tract. And some of the census tracts that we've been using the data for to create the equitable growth framework have areas that we use estimates that have as high as 72% around the blue line as being African-American, where the more recent data has that about 45%. So even though that's for the same period, the data is substantially different, which would change the shape and direction of the equitable growth framework. So that's a high level question to talk about in more detail later.
Sure. A quick response that I'll just share quickly is the detailed census data at the smaller geographies. We just got that in September, so we're still filtering through and seeing how that affects the data that we've been using.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly and Dr. Byers. And shall we move through the agenda? UDO next. I believe that's going to be Laura.
Yeah, and this is Alan. I got the slides, but I'm waiting for somebody to allow me to share my screen.
You should be able to share, Alan. You're a co-host already.
Yep, thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Alan is here with me today, and we have a brief presentation. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up on your time a little bit that we wanted to give you guys on the UDO. So if we go to the first of the 3 slides. So we will be releasing the first draft, and that's the first of 4 drafts of the UDO on Thursday. So watch for it in your inbox. Obviously, it'll be coming to the Planning Commission and a number of other bodies Thursday afternoon. So we're really excited about that. It's been a long time coming, and we're looking forward to hearing the feedback from you guys and from the community. In addition to obviously emailing this out to a number of people, we will have a press release. We'll have social media blasts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Nextdoor. And we will be placing hard copies of the UDO in public libraries and YMCAs for people that maybe are not online all the time. So a little bit of a highlight, and we're going to want to come back and give you guys more details on how we're engaging people. Working on with consultants on videos and information to go onto the page for the UDO and for planning, design, and development onto the websites. We are going to have extensive public comment opportunities. And we have already been out promoting the UDO, and we'll be out again this week with 3 pop-ups at CAT stations to let people know about the UDO. And we'll be doing that for most of this month. And at the end of the month, we'll actually be starting a range of virtual and in-person meetings that will occur through the early part of January. So we want lots of opportunities for people to input, to learn about the UDO and to give their feedback. Regular social media posts. When we get the comments and consolidate everything that we have gotten in January, we will go ahead and look at what we have, and then we'll be working with the interdepartmental team on what we think based on the comments we've heard needs to change. And we'll have a redlined version of the initial draft, which will become the second draft for the UDO that will go out in early March. So about a month and a half after all of the comments come in. And we will continue to work with the advisory committee, the Ordinance Advisory Committee, as we gather comments and start to see themes. We will get their feedback on some of what we're hearing, or much of what we're hearing. So again, the community engagement meetings through early January. Comments on the first draft will be accepted through Friday, January 14th. So that will be most of October, November, December, and the first half of January. And for updates and more information, obviously the UDO website, charlotteudo.org. And that's really what we wanted to let you guys know the status and make sure that you guys knew to watch in your inbox this Thursday, or we'll be also, some folks have asked for hard copies or thumb drives. We'll also be getting those out to you. And Chairwoman, that's what I have today.
Thank you so very much for your brevity, Laura. Do we have any questions for Laura and or Ellen? Raise hand feature, please. Hearing none, moving right along to Monica on Silverline TOD.
Hello, how are you all doing today? I am actually going to turn this over first to John Howard with CATS to lead off this presentation, and then we will trade off. And then if you guys have questions, we will answer them at that time.
Yes, thank you, Monica. I do have some slides to share with you. If I can have share screen capability, please. There we go. Thank you so much. Okay, can y'all see the presentation slide? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. It's been a while since we've been before you to talk about the Silverline TOD study. So I will move to this presentation rather quickly. As Monica stated, I'll give kind of the first 2 points here to go over the TOD study and purpose and our deliverables and scope to date. And then she will back clean up and talk about the community outreach update and our next steps. Some of you have seen this presentation before and have been involved in many of our outreach meetings, virtually or in person. So this is a kind of a three-tier project where we've got the design and engineering component, which is going through light rail corridor alignment refinements and station area work. If you saw the TAP committee meeting last Monday, we did talk about phasing and kind of the next steps with meetings coming up virtually October 19th and October 20th. The part that we're talking about today is a Silverline, the TOD study. And the third component is the rail trail study. That's also going to wrap up this year. Just brief recap. The Silverline is about 29 miles of 29 stations reaching from potentially Gaston County and Belmont through the city of Charlotte down Wilkinson Boulevard, through Center City and the Charlotte Gateway Station, and then out Independence Boulevard, eventually terminating at Central Piedmont Community College and potentially into Union County in the towns of Stallings and Indian Trail. This alignment was adopted back in April 28th of this year, and there will be further analysis of 5 station areas: the Subtle Station on Wilkinson Boulevard, Summit Avenue near Charlotte Pipeline Boundary, a new station in First Ward, a discussion about the Monroe Road corridor, and then potentially a refinement of the Central Piedmont Station down in Matthews. So again, briefly, this plan is different from the previous studies in that we're taking the lessons learned from Blue Line and BLE. We're talking more about displacement and gentrification and affordable housing in this study. And also we had lots of opportunities for education around what TOD is and what it is not. And again, our team has also been expanded, of course, to include the towns outside of Mecklenburg County and the jurisdictions outside of the county. And basically the goals are looking at, what kind of place we want this to be as far as these various station areas. They're all different, understanding that they may not look the same, but still the same TOD goals would apply. Second piece is the market study that's attached to the TOD study. And then, of course, looking at how we get connections to and from the station, sidewalks, streets, and bike facilities and the rail trail and greenways as well. Understanding that this is more about just getting from point A to point B along the corridor. We want to look at how we can improve the connections to our communities, both within the city of Charlotte and also outside of that. And of course, these 4 goals, if you will, are to enhance connectivity, to make sure they encourage transportive development around the station, then that half-mile walk shed, to enhance community identity, and to expand opportunities. That's kind of the equity lens of this. And again, equitable TOD, we talk a lot about affordable housing, but not a whole lot about business retention. But generally speaking, we want to have equal access for everyone, whether or not you own a vehicle, or how do we get those premium bus connections to and from the station. So looking at it from a broader framework of how do you get people to and from where they need to work or educate themselves, institutions. We have several colleges along the 29 miles. So make sure we have good connections to and from those community assets. Again, market assessment, we use this to help inform the Silver Line design team as far as defining those station areas and the alignment itself. We do have 7 demonstration station areas within the plan, and Monica will go over the website that we've got online right now. And it's also going to include a topology manual and also a white paper, if you will, for tools for other jurisdictions that do not have TOD on the ground, as Charlotte does. And then, of course, we have the high-level TOD concepts for the other 22 stations that we're not doing the deep dive on, like for the 7 demonstration areas. So again, broadly looking at those connections, network plan, looking at blocks and spacing, and just, again, general infrastructure needs around these station areas. And of course, we have our affordable housing assessment in partnership with our Housing and Neighborhood Services Department to help us have a good approach to look at affordable housing within the station areas. And lastly, again, just talking about other infrastructure needs that also includes potentially parks and open space, preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing in the area, and potentially joint use opportunities. And with that, I will pass the baton to Monica to talk about community outreach.
Yes, so we started our outreach last winter, spring, and have been continuing it through the spring and summer. So John and I have been going to neighborhood meetings and really talking to them in coordination with the design team to kick that off. And then in May, our team partnered with the Urban Land Institute to do 2 different panels, one focused on setting the stage for TOD in some of our smaller towns. So really focusing on what Belmont and Matthews might look like in the future and what they could expect from transit. And then the other panel focusing on equity. And if you have not watched those are available on our website, and I'll give the website, but they're really informative, especially for those of us in the city of Charlotte who are interested in equitable TOD. We had a great discussion with the TOD manager in Atlanta, some of the team from Austin, Texas, and then we had some members from the team out in Seattle. So really people looking and doing some innovative things and things that we could do here. You can go to the next slide, John. And that led us into our kind of June workshops, July workshops. So we then, as soon as the Urban Land Institute education workshops wrapped up and those sessions were done, we launched an online survey and really trying to get feedback. We left it open for a fairly significant amount of time to really try and understand what people wanted to see in their transit station areas. And it's interesting, it really aligns to some of the things that Catherine was mentioning earlier, and that people obviously have a special place in their hearts for parks and public space and really want to see that shine and be the highlight of a transit station area as well. We were also not surprised to see that pedestrian and bicycle amenities and connections were really fairly high priority in the area of transit as well. And so we saw this, you can go to the next slide, John. We saw this not only just in our online survey, but also we had 6 open houses we started in the west and we went to the east. So we started in Belmont, we finished in Matthews. We saw Philip and Astrid. You guys came and saw us at Romare Bearden, which was nice to see familiar faces. But we had approximately 350 attendees over the course of those 2 weeks of meetings. We had 3 meetings each week. And while the meetings were going on in the evenings with the public, our team was having stakeholder interviews and working with designers, landscape architects, engineers at our studio at the Urban Design Center during the day, and really just getting as much information as we could about what the 7 demonstration areas would look like and what the infrastructure needs were for each of our station areas. So you can see kind of some of the highlights, some of the things I just mentioned: bike lanes and trails, public space. In our outer towns, really people want to maintain that small town feel, and people want to figure out where the prime locations are for redevelopment while also protecting the character and the existing, specifically the existing affordable housing along the proposed transit line. So you can click here and see our website. The real reason why we wanted to get to speak with you guys today is, number 1, to give you an update on the project, but number 2, let you know that all of this information is online in our virtual workshop, and you can go to catsilverline.com. And if you don't mind, if we have a second, I can, I'll go ahead and stop your screen sharing. I was going to say I can show the website as to what it looks like on the Cat Silverline website. And we have an entire website set up where you can go through and see each of the demonstration areas. So it looks like this, and it basically replicates everything that we had at the meetings over the summer and includes all that information in a digital format. So it includes some of the feedback and comments that we heard over the summer. So you can go through and see what we were just speaking of kind of what is TOD. You can watch the videos from the ULI panels. You can watch John do a great 101 learning about what TOD is. Then you can go in and look at each of the demonstration areas. So remount, you can check this out. We have a slider bar here that will show you what it looks like currently and then what it looks like from the demonstration area our designers did. And then you can see these renderings with a slide view of before and after here. And then you'll also see, which this is very important for our future transit line, is what the capital investment projects and what the infrastructure needs are for the area. This is just the very first kind of brush at this for the Silver Line. Obviously, as the Silver Line continues to progress, we will be working on this extensively in the years to come. But the first thing you have to do is really catalog what all the needs are. And this is the first stab at that. So you can download this and click on it. And if you click on it, it will bring you to more in-depth information about what each of those things might look like. For those of you that are familiar with the Blue Line project, the same process took place with the Blue Line and the Blue Line extension. So that's where we got some of those infrastructure, new sidewalks, streetscape projects, and things of that manner. And you can see all of those also in another online map that will show you both the TOD, potential TOD areas for each of the stations too. So you're able to leave your feedback on each of these. And we really want to ask you guys to do that and also help us get the word out, because this virtual workshop will be open for approximately 6 weeks, and we would like to get as much feedback as possible from this in these 6 weeks. So I'm going to stop sharing this. John, if you want to share back the presentation, if you don't mind, and we'll finish, and then we can answer the questions. John and I can just take turns if people have questions, as long as we have time. I know you guys have a couple more things on your agenda. So again, we have the website open from October 1st through November 12th. We are currently both working on our deliverables. So you can see down there at the bottom. So station typology manual. So are stations ones you can walk up to? What are the land uses around them? We're finishing up the demonstration area scenario. So that's why that feedback's important on our website. And then we're working on an implementation strategy on how we get all this done while the design team is designing the actual rail line itself. So while we've been doing all that, I also just want to point out too that we are working really closely with the design team and providing them feedback and input on their alignment decisions. And so when they have a question point, we give them feedback. So you can see here the timeline where we are. We are in that implementation strategy development phase. Our grant officially runs out in early spring. So we are working hard to finish this phase of work by the end of the year. Before we answer questions, just know that this project is a large project. It is a project that will take many, many years, and we will be continuing to work on transit-oriented development, implementation strategies, affordable housing, displacement for both businesses and residents, capital projects, all of those things. Even when this actual phase is done, will not end. We will be working on it for the next 10 to 15 years while the Silver Line's in development. So just know that we might not have all the answers today, but this is the first step. It's the earliest we've started such an effort, and we're excited about it. We look forward to your feedback.
Is that the end, John and Monica?
Yep, that is it. Do you want us to answer questions, Kiba, or you pitch them to us?
Please. We do have a few that were posed in the chat, and I'll give those two commissioners an opportunity to ask their questions outside of chat if they so choose. If you so choose, please use the raise hand feature. Commissioners Russell and Harvey. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I got your last statement as far as this being an ongoing conversation, but conversations around affordable housing and displacement and all that. Are the community engagement events only focused, say, on more resident-based conversations, or are there conversations, to say, with NHS and or other community organizations to ensure that there is a more granular approach to community engagement and input from the affordable housing standpoint?
So we have worked pretty closely with, so Miles Vaughn, who is with Housing and Neighborhood Services, is on our steering committee leadership team. So we've been working really closely with him and his group. We've met with affordable housing developers. I believe we had probably 6 to 10 participate very early in the project that we kind of got all of their feedback on. We have a consultant that is just focused on the housing on the housing issues. This has also been doing interviews. And then our engagement has really been, we invited some of the local organizations early on for conversations. Our engagement over the summer was locationally focused. So it was not topic focused. We had them in our demonstration areas. So we had a meeting in Belmont, we had the meeting at Remount, right at the intersection of Remount and Wilkinson. We had a meeting in Uptown, one on the site at Bojangles, and one at Village Lake at the library there, and then one further out in Matthews. So we feel like with this effort, I think we thought we would probably get further in the displacement affordable housing conversation, but it is very complex. We have a grant proposal in right now to kind of deep dive into engagement and equity in this corridor. So we are hoping to get that funded because we feel like this effort we have not been able to go as far as we need to in that specific topic. So we are hoping to find out, it's an FTA grant. We're hoping to find out in the coming months if we get that. And then that would be a focus. The entire grant would be around equitable TOD and a deep dive into grassroots organizing engagement around this issue. So we feel like we are doing more than we have done in the past, but there is a lot more to be done, in summary.
Thank you, Monica. Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, sort of along those lines, one of the things mentioned earlier was lessons learned. And I didn't know if you had any documentation that you could share with us on what we think we learned from the Blue Line extension, both phase 1 and phase 2 of that, and how that would translate into strategies you're utilizing now to mitigate the impacts, the potential unintended outcomes that happened with the Blue Line?
Yeah, I can kick off some of that response. So the Civil Line design team did go through kind of a follow-up on the Blue Line and BLE from lessons learned standpoint. And a lot of that was kind of engineering based and operational based. But to Monica's point about the TOD study itself, I think what we learned, of course, from the past is, how do we look at a more comprehensive strategy about housing and having those conversations, and including, the county and Park and Recreation, and looking at other connections, if you will, to other planning efforts, so that we would not miss any opportunities to collaborate from that standpoint.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I do think it'd be worth digging into some of the data I mentioned earlier, because there are neighborhoods along the Blue Line extension on the phase 2 that have had a decrease in African-American population by about 500, while at the same time having a 500 increase in white population. So basically total population stayed the same, but we displaced. And so that's the type of thing as it relates to affordable housing that we need to be more factually based understanding, so that when we're going into this next phase, do we have adequate mitigating strategies to prevent that from happening? Because that was not the intent, obviously, of what was planned with the Blue Line.
Yeah, and both John and I are involved with some of the greater anti-displacement work going on in the city. And so we have been talking about how we use both programs that are going on through Housing and Neighborhood Services to understand some of that, because they're looking to pilot things in neighborhoods that might have access to mass transit, like along the Blue Line extension. And then it would help us figure out what tools do we need to put in place ahead of time on the Silver Line as a city organization.
Yeah, and along those lines, maybe analyzing some of the Blue Line station area plans and what was intended and what in reality has happened when you look at the current mapping that's being done. And so that would give you an idea of the difference between what you thought you were creating versus what reality is turned into. Just trying to get more detailed into that from the housing standpoint.
And I can add one more point just quickly. Part of my role here at CATS is to track that activity around the stations on Blue Line and BLE. And one thing that I've started doing over the past year or so is tracking affordable housing development. And we are seeing units come online, especially on BLE, and a few that are percolating around the Blue Line further south. But again, that data is out there, and we can definitely share that with you in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just highlight for you Optimus Park as an area where what you planned with the area station plan and what reality is are not particularly well aligned.
We will look forward to continue sharing. John, thank you so much for your comments there. And we'll reserve the last comment for Commissioner Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just make 3 quick points, and thank you to Monica and John for the presentation. 3 things that I think we really need to be looking forward to, not only as an organization, but as a city and as a staff, is number 1, the city needs to start prioritizing buying land on any of these routes that they're looking at building out. Too often we just put routes on paper and then expect that the private sector is going to provide the units that we need for affordable housing. And that's not going to happen unless the city starts getting ahead of the potential routes and buying property. The second thing that I would like to stress, especially with John being here from CATS, is connectivity. And that connectivity doesn't always mean cars. We really need to start thinking about planning for people and think that people will come, and not just planning for cars that will have people attached to them. I think we do way too much of the planning for cars, and then that people will come with the cars, and that completely screws up how things work and how the city should be laid out going forward. We can't be afraid to look into that. And then the third thing that I would also recommend is that as we're looking at building out future TODs, we need to start thinking about severe reductions in the amount of parking that we allow in the zoning ordinance for TODs. I think we still rely too much on parking and bringing cars as opposed to bringing people. And I mean, if you look at some of the Blue Line areas, there are large amounts of land that are right around Blue Line stations. I'll take New Bern as an example, where you've just got massive parking decks that are block size, and all of that could be used to house people or provide a much better cityscape. But it's just a giant blank canvas with a giant garage for cars, and that's not helping us as a city. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment, Commissioner Harvey. I think that, I'm sorry, Commissioner Russell. I think that in several presentations prior to today on Silver Line's alignment, planning, and projections, staff has touched on some of those same priorities. So I think that you are in alignment with some of the thoughts and things that are shared prior to today's presentation on those topics: plans for moving people, not just cars, reduction in parking, and land acquisitions. I think that was one of the first things that John came to us about nearly 2 years ago now, when we first started hearing whispers of the Silver Line. So thank you so much for your comments. And that was the last comment on, I'm sorry, John or Monica, did you guys want to add anything to what I just said or reply to Commissioner Russell?
Nope.
No, agreed.
Thank you so much. So our last agenda, actually next to last agenda item, is we lost a planning commission member back in July. That particular commissioner was our non-voting appointee to CARPO, and there has been a need since then to replace that commissioner. And CARPO is basically a body that plans for regional transportation projects for future. It provides a range of choices respect to natural and built environment. And they have those charges. They touch on anything from air quality, obviously transportation planning, but energy contingency planning, things of that nature. They're basically a forum to resolve conflicts that might arise out of planning for transportation especially major initiatives throughout the Charlotte Regional Transportation Area. And the Charlotte Mecklenburg Planning Commission is one body that has a non-voting member. And right now we're missing that member. So I am very pleased to announce the replacement for our member to the CARTPO board, and that is Commissioner Peter Kelly. CARTPO meets every third Wednesday, and I am greatly appreciative to Commissioner Kelly for his willingness and desire to serve and represent this body on CARTPO. And being a part of that organization will help keep us informed as Commissioner Kelly brings forth information from those meetings, helps keep us informed on things that are within our purview, things like the strategic mobility plan as part of the 2040 future plan and light rail project development, as we just heard a presentation on. So I thank you greatly, Commissioner Kelly, again, for your willingness and desire to represent us on that very important board. And I'll leave the last words on this to you, if you so choose.
Thank you. I hope to represent the group well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And future work session topics, we will continue to have repeat sessions on UDO and place type mappings. Those are very, very important initiatives that are both happening and will carry us through pretty much the next 6 to 8 months for planning commissions. So we probably should be prepared to hear about those things at least monthly. And that will be on the Planning Commission agenda for November 8th, in addition to discussing and finalizing our 2022 work session program. And for Planning Committee for October, we know we have the October mandatory referrals, but we also just confirmed with Catherine and Dr. Robin that they will be coming before you with some additional information on the place type, specifically data metrics and things of that nature. Is there anything else or before adjourning?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out there was some discussion at Executive Committee about the November meeting being a different date than the first Monday, and it was actually voted on and revised to November 8th, which is actually the second Monday. So the work session will be the second Monday of the month next.
Thank you so very much for noting that. Please, everyone, note that on your calendars. Anything else before we adjourn? Let's consider a motion then. Oh, I'm sorry, one last note. As we have heard from Laura on UDO, from Monica and John on Silverline, from Catherine on policy mapping, and from Alicia and Dr. Byers on data metrics, manuals and metrics. For all inquiries or questions that may come up after this meeting, first name dot last name at charlottenc.gov is their email addresses. And if you need any spellings, please let me know. I'll be glad to get you direct email addresses. And additionally, for Commissioner Kelly, Liz Babson, who is the director of CDOT, serves as the chair of the CARTPO board, and Candace and I will be your conduit to connect to the body and to Liz on that. So look for some additional information there. And let's consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second,
And-
Blumenthal.
I'm sorry, who was that motion? Was that Spencer?
It was.
Spencer on the motion and Blumenthal with the second. And I will consider unanimous consent from everyone. Have a good rest of your Monday.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.